Hello everyone, my name is Akalanka Galappaththi. I'm a PhD student. I work with Dr. Sarah Nadi at Software Maintenance and Reuse Lab in the University of Alberta. Today, I'm going to present the findings of the empirical study of technical context in Stack Overflow. This project is done in collaboration with Christoph Treude from the University of Melbourne. Stack Overflow is a popular among software engineers and developer enthusiasts, and it contains a lot of question and answers. Given the huge amount of information available in here, finding information that is specific to one's looking for could be a challenging task. Some of the previous studies supports our argument. For example, 37% of the questions analyzed in this study contain more than one answer. And average length of an answer is around 800 characters. In another case, 95% of the answers contain 75% of text. So these findings indicate that Stack Overflow threads could contain multiple answers, and those answers contain longer textual descriptions. Therefore, finding information in a Stack Overflow thread could take some time, especially given that Stack Overflow provides limited amount of visual indicators about its content. So let's talk about the visual cues available in Stack Overflow. If you look at the question in here, it has a score. Score indicate how the community evaluates the quality of its content. Then the question tags indicate what kind of technology is discussed in the question. Therefore, one can simply look at the question tags without reading the question body. If you look at the answers, it has a score as well. The green check mark indicate the answer selected by the original poster if there are more than one answer available for the thread. The edit history indicate whether the content has been modified or not. If you look at this answer and comment, as you can see, it's simply plain text apart from the score in here. But once we start reading through the content, one might even realize some of these plain text are actual Stack Overflow tags. When we identify Stack Overflow tags mentioned in plain text in an answer or comment body, we refer to them as technical context. Since the word context could be interpreted differently, for this study, we define the context as the information that characterize the technologies and assumption of a given answer or a comment. Let's recall the question tags of this thread. As you can see, SQL injection and SQL already mentioned in the question tags. However, the three other tags in this answer and the comment are not mentioned in the question tags. So if there's a tag mentioned in plain text, which is not already mentioned in the question tags, we consider them as additional context in this study. We think clearly emphasizing the additional context available in answers or comments could help users to navigate through long Stack Overflow thread efficiently. For example, a user can either decide whether to read an answer or a comment or skip it simply because there is something not interested to them. However, additional context is a new phenomenon. Nobody has ever studied this before. Therefore, first of all, we have to manually go through Stack Overflow threads and verify this concept exists and determine which of the additional context could potentially serve as navigational cues. Here, I'm going to explain our research methodology. So our method has three phases. In phase one, we select sample of Stack Overflow threads. Then we want to filter out the sentences that does not contain any tags. Then from them, we filter out the sentences that only mention the question tags. So the resulting sentences are the candidate sentences. So after selecting the sentences from phase one, we go to phase two, where we do a manual evaluation. Here we ask annotators who are the authors of this study to go through the candidate sentences and manually verify whether those sentences contain additional context. After the results of the manual validation allow us to answer the first research question, which is how frequently additional context available in Stack Overflow. Once we extract the sentences with additional context, we go to phase 3, where we try to answer 2 other research questions. The second one is what types of additional context are available? And the third research question is what is the purpose of mentioning additional context in each sentence? So in this slide, I provide a brief overview of our methodology. In the next couple of slides, I will go into details of each phase and discuss the methodology in detail. Since Stack Overflow contains a lot of questions and answers, we limit our study to the questions tagged with one of these. We choose JSON because it's a popular data exchange format, and also it's supported by many programming languages. Regex also supported by multiple programming languages. It is a popular text pattern matching technique in strings. Django is a popular web framework implemented in Python. So after removing the questions that does not contain any answers and removing duplicates, we still have a lot of questions. Since we cannot possibly manually evaluate all of them, we choose 90% confidence interval and 10% error margin, which results 67 threads from each tag. Once we randomly select the threads from each tag population, we use a script to filter out the sentences that does not contain any tag. This step is necessary because we didn't really want to burden the annotators by asking them to read through long Stack Overflow thread, which might not even contain any Stack Overflow tag. So once we remove the sentences that does not contain any tags, we remove the sentences that only mention the question tags for a given thread. So the candidate sentences in these steps will be passed to the phase 2, where we do manual evaluation. So in manual evaluation, which we use to determine whether the sentence contains additional context, each annotator answers 2 questions. The first question is to determine whether the tag used as intended. To do this, annotators refer to the tag description and read the sentence to determine description matches to the sentence and how the tag is used in the sentence. Then we answer yes or no. The second question is to determine whether the tag is overlapped with its parent content. For example, if the sentence came from an answer, the immediate parent is the Stack Overflow question of that given thread. If it came from an answer comment, the immediate parent is the corresponding answer. So if the tag is not overlapped, we say no, otherwise we mark it as yes. When we get yes for question 1 and no for question 2, that indicate that sentence contain additional context, which we will use to answer research question 1. So let's look at a couple of examples to understand how the annotation process works. So in the first sentence, Django 1.10 was extracted as the tag. And when we look at the description and the sentence, we could determine the tag is used as intended. When we look at the parent content, that we could determine the tag wasn't overlapped with its parent content. Therefore, this is an additional context. In the sentence 2, dot is the tag. However, dot, according to the Stack Overflow description, dot is a graph description language, but this sentence does not talk about graphs. Therefore, we answer no for question 1. Once you answer no, the rest of the questions are answering the rest of the questions. It's not meaningful. The third example, static is used as intended. And since we found it is overlapping, with its parent content, it is not considered as an additional context. Moving on to phase 3, where we try to understand what type of additional context are available in Stack Overflow and what are the purposes. We use the sentences that contain additional context. Then we extract all the tags that were used as additional context. Here we use open coding. So open coding is a qualitative analysis where we take all the tags and group tags that will have similar characters together, and we assign a group label to those tags. For example, when we have Java and Python as additional context, we assign a label programming language for that. JSON or jQuery considered as library, and we have computing concepts for tags such as client, format, and host. This step was considerably easy because Stack Overflow tags are available in these sentences. So then we use these categories to answer the research question 2. However, identifying reasons are not that easy because reasons are not readily available in Stack Overflow threads. Therefore, we ask another question in phase 2. So this annotating question asks why the tag is mentioned. So authors provide free-form text. Then, once again, we use open coding for these reasons provided by each annotator. Then group them. For example, reasons such as concept related to a solution or clarifying a concept falls under tag category technical explanation. A reason like Python API to work with Amazon Web Service belong to a solution for a library and API. Once we generate and finalize the category labels for reasons, we ask annotators to go back to the sentences that contain additional context and annotate it using the newly generated category labels. Then we use those annotations to answer the research question 3. To answer the research question 1, how frequent additional context available in Stack Overflow, we found that out of 3,504 sentences, only 288 sentences contained additional context. When we look at where did these sentences came from, majority of the sentences belong to answer sentences. So in summary, only 8% of the sentences that we processed contain additional context, and 46% of the threads that we analyze contain at least one sentence with additional context. So this is an interesting finding because this indicates additional context exists because half of the threads contain at least one additional context, and only limited number of sentences contain them. So if we were to use additional context as navigational cues, it should not create a clutter in the thread because we are only going to create a few navigational cues in a thread. Then we analyze the types of additional context, or what types of tags we found. We found that 38% of the tags that we found belong to programming or computing concepts. And also 50% of the tags belong to a library, framework, programming language, tool or application, API database. And from these tags, we found that 45% of the sentences that contain additional context belong to one of these 5 categories. We actually need to combine the findings of this study, of this research question with the next one. So let's move on to the research question 3. Looking at the categories or for the reasons why the Stack Overflow tags mentioned as additional context, we found that 79% of the sentences that contain additional context are used to provide a technical explanation or discussion. And 95% of those 79 use programming or computing concepts to provide a technical explanation or a discussion. More interestingly, 20% of the solution type or solution condition types covered 40% of the popular tags that I mentioned before. For example, it could be API, library or framework, database, programming language, so on. So what does all of this mean? As I mentioned before, for how frequent additional context available, they were available in half of the threads that we analyzed, but not all sentences contain additional context. Only 8% of the sentences contain them. Therefore, if we were to use them as navigational cues, for example, if we are going to create a tag for answers or comments, it should not create a clutter. It should be very easy for users to identify what's going on in the answer or a comment. And if somebody is interested in creating these navigational cues automatically, they could focus on tag categories that belong to APIs, library frameworks, programming language, and as well as they could focus on the intentions, like the direct solutions and solution conditions. So in summary, navigating through a Stack Overflow thread to find information that we are looking for could be challenging, because Stack Overflow threads contain multiple answers, and those answers could contain lengthy textual descriptions. Since Stack Overflow does not provide navigational cues, we think clearly identifying additional context and emphasizing them could help users to navigate longer Stack Overflow threads efficiently. Our results indicate that only a smaller percentage of sentences contain additional context, and half of the threads that we analyze contain at least one additional context. And also we found that 45% of the threads that contain additional context either belong to API, library, framework, or programming language, or some sort of a technical context. And also most of the time they indicate a solution or solution condition. Therefore, if we were to create navigational cues based on those categories, we should be able to create it without creating a huge clutter in Stack Overflow thread. Most of the annotated information and our findings are available in this website. Thank you very much.